This is a fascinating and complex period of history. The story of the last German emperor, Kaiser Wilhelm II, is a tale of personal ambition, national transformation, and ultimately, catastrophic failure. Here's the full true story of his life and regime. Who was Kaiser Wilhelm II? Full name: Friedrich Wilhelm Victor Albert von Hohenzollern. Rhein, 15. June 1888, 9. November 1918. Title: German Emperor, Kaiser, and King of Prussia. He was the eldest grandchild of Britain's Queen Victoria and related to most of the royal families of Europe. His reign defined the German Empire's Kaiserreich aggressive foreign policy and its path into World War I. The making of the Kaiser, 1859-1888, his personal story is crucial to understanding his actions as ruler. A traumatic birth. Wilhelm was born with a withered left arm, likely due to brain damage during a difficult breech birth. This physical disability, in an era that prized martial prowess, profoundly affected his psychology. He underwent brutal and painful medical treatments to no avail, fostering a lifelong need to overcompensate and project an image of hypermasculinity and strength. A clash of parents. His father, Crown Prince Friedrich, was a liberal Anglophile man married to Victoria, Princess Royal of Britain. They envisioned a modern, parliamentary Germany. Wilhelm, however, was influenced by his conservative grandfather, Wilhelm II, and especially his reactionary tutor, Georg Hinz-Peter, who instilled in him a belief in autocratic, divine right monarchy and a deep suspicion of democracy. Rejecting liberalism. Wilhelm grew to despise his parents' weak liberal views, aligning himself with the conservative Prussian military aristocracy, the Junkers. His relationship with his mother in particular became bitterly hostile. This background created a man who was insecure and obsessed with his own image, impulsive, arrogant, and emotionally volatile, a fervent believer in military power and the supremacy of the monarchy. The dawn of the regime dropping the pilot, 1888-1890. The year 1888 was the year of three emperors. 1. His grandfather, Wilhelm II, died. His father, Friedrich III, ascended the throne but died of throat cancer after just 99 days. 3. Wilhelm II, aged 29, became Kaiser. His first and most significant act was to get rid of the legendary Chancellor, Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor who had masterminded German unification. While Bismarck was a conservative but a pragmatic one, his foreign policy was based on complex alliances designed to keep Germany secure and avoid a major war. Wilhelm II wanted a more aggressive, expansionist world policy, Weltpolitik, declaring Germany demanded its place in the sun. The dismissal. In 1890, after clashing repeatedly, Wilhelm forced the 75-year-old Bismarck to resign. This was a monumental error. Wilhelm believed he could rule himself, but he lacked Bismarck's skill and patience. He effectively dropped the pilot who had steered the European ship of state, and now the impulsive Kaiser was at the helm. The Kaiser's domestic policy, Innenpolitik. Wilhelm's role in domestic affairs was often contradictory. Authoritarian tendencies. He believed in his divine right to rule and was often frustrated by the Reichstag, parliament, which, despite not being fully democratic, had the power to approve budgets. Social policy. Surprisingly, he continued Bismarck's state socialism, supporting welfare programs like old-age pensions and worker protections. This was a pragmatic move to win working-class support away from the growing Socialist Party, SPD, which he personally loathed. Military focus. He was the supreme warlord and lavished attention and funds on the military, which became a state within a state, loyal first to the Kaiser and not the civilian government. A personal regiment. He attempted to rule directly through a series of weaker chancellors who served at his pleasure, like Leo von Caprivi, Bernhard von Bülow, and Theobald von Bethmann-Hollweg. However, his impulsiveness and inconsistency often led to chaotic policymaking. The Kaiser's foreign policy, Weltpolitik, and the path to war, this is where his impact was most profound and disastrous. He abandoned Bismarck's careful balance of power for a new aggressive course. Weltpolitik, world policy. The goal was to transform Germany from a European power into a global imperial power rivaling Great Britain. A massive navy, He championed the buildup of a huge high-seas fleet under Admiral Alfred von Tirpitz. This was a direct challenge to British naval supremacy and fundamentally poisoned relations with the UK. Colonial ambitions. He pushed for a larger colonial empire, leading to diplomatic crises, e.g. the Moroccan crises of 1905 and 1911 with France, that alienated other powers. Alienating everyone, he let the reinsurance treaty with Russia lapse, pushing Russia into the arms of France. His naval buildup turned Britain from a potential ally into a determined enemy, leading them to form the Entente Cordiale with France, 1904, and the Triple Entente with Russia, 1907. He gave unconditional support to Austria-Hungary, Germany's main ally, effectively giving them a blank check to act aggressively in the Balkans. His bombastic, threatening rhetoric, like his speech supporting the Boers against Britain, made Europe nervous. His infamous 1908 interview in the Daily Telegraph, where he angered the British, Japanese, and Russians simultaneously, was a diplomatic disaster. By 1914, Wilhelm's policies had successfully diplomatically isolated Germany, surrounding it with a coalition of hostile powers, France, Russia, and Great Britain. The Kaiser in World War I, 1914-1918. The blank check. In July 1914, after the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, Wilhelm initially urged caution. However, he quickly reaffirmed Germany's full support for Austria-Hungary's plan to crush Serbia. This guarantee of support was the critical catalyst that turned the Balkan crisis into a world war. The Shadow Emperor. As supreme warlord, Wilhelm was the theoretical commander-in-chief. In reality, once the Schlieffen Plan began, effective power shifted to the military high command, first to General Erich von Falkenhayn, and then to the Duumvirate of Generals Paul von Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff. A figurehead. From 1916 onward, Germany became a de facto military dictatorship under Hindenburg and Ludendorff. The Kaiser was sidelined, reduced to reviewing troops and signing off on decisions made by his generals. He became a shadow Kaiser, his influence waning as the war dragged on. Unrestricted submarine warfare. He was persuaded by the generals to resume unrestricted U-boat warfare in 1917, a gamble that directly brought the United States into the war against Germany. A decision that sealed Germany's fate. Abdication and exile, 1918 to 1941. By late 1918, Germany was starving, its army was defeated, and revolution broke out at home. The generals' betrayal. Recognizing defeat was inevitable, Hindenburg and Ludendorff insisted that a civilian government must sue for peace and accept the armistice to save the army's honor. They effectively pushed the responsibility for defeat onto the democratic politicians who would become the November criminals. Abdication. With revolution spreading and the monarchy collapsing, Chancellor Prince Max von Baden announced the Kaiser's abdication on November 9, 1918, without his consent. The same day, the Republic was proclaimed. Flight to Holland. Realizing his position was untenable and his safety at risk, Wilhelm crossed the border into the neutral Netherlands on November 10th. The Dutch Queen Wilhelmina granted him asylum. Life in exile. He lived the rest of his life at Hoesdorn, a small manor house. He spent his time chopping down trees, an obsession, writing embittered memoirs blaming Jews, Freemasons, and others for Germany's defeat, and hoping for a monarchist restoration. He was horrified by the rise of Hitler, whom he saw as a vulgar upstart, but was pleased by the early Nazi military successes. He died of a pulmonary embolism in 1941, aged 82, under Nazi occupation. Summary: legacy and historical assessment. Kaiser Wilhelm II is one of history's great what-if figures. His regime is a classic study in how personal failings can have global consequences. What he'd done during his regime: 1. Dismantled Bismarck's security system. He created a volatile and aggressive foreign policy that destabilized Europe. 2. Alienated Great Britain. His naval program made a mortal enemy of the world's greatest power. 3. Enabled Austria-Hungary. His blank check was the decisive act that allowed a local war to become a world war. 4. Presided over militarization. He allowed the military to usurp civilian political power, both before and during the war. Failed as a wartime leader. He was unable to control his own generals or provide effective strategic direction. 6. Left a poisoned legacy. His abdication and the manner of Germany's defeat created the stab-in-the-back myth, Dolchstoßlegende, which the Nazis would later exploit to undermine the Weimar Republic and rise to power. Historians debate whether he was a masterful, malevolent force or a shadow emperor who was more posturing than substance. The truth lies in between. He was a man with immense power and authority who, through his insecurity, impulsiveness, and hunger for glory, set in motion the forces that would lead to the first great catastrophe of the 20th century.